Mike O'Mara, Radio Entertainment.
Welcome, everybody, to the Mike O'Mara Show Extra. It's Rob, and I'm going to take a breath because I'm very excited. Okay, let's read the introduction. Rodney Dillard is a pioneering figure in American music, best known as the founding member of the legendary bluegrass group the Dillards, and with a career spanning over 6 decades. I don't understand that because he's 40 years old. Rodney helped bring bluegrass to mainstream audiences through innovative musicianship and memorable performances. And of course, he was Rodney Darling on the Andy Griffith Show, a trailblazer in blending traditional Appalachian sounds with contemporary influences. Rodney's contributions have left an indelible mark on bluegrass, country rock, and American folk music. Plus, he made my very first favorite album. Rodney, welcome to the show. And also your wife, Beverly Dillard. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Like I said, I take nothing for granted. And I'm so, I'm really excited about doing this with you since I found out that you were interested in that first, one of the first albums, Wheat Straw Suite.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, before we get into it, I was like 4 or 5 and I got a record player for Christmas. Okay. Horrible. Just a thing that would shred your vinyl because it was like a Fisher Price, right? It was in my bedroom. And so I went to my dad and I said, I want records to listen to. And people don't realize that back in the early 70s, when people would have a party, they would bring albums with them. And then they would drink, and then they would leave the albums. So at that time, my father had like 3 copies of Wheat Straw Suite. One was my Uncle George's, one was my Uncle Sam's, and one was his. So he gave it to me, and I took it to my room and listened to it until I wore it out. And the Dillards were my first favorite band in the world. Wow. And Wheat Straw Suite is like almost like a soundtrack to my life. I've listened to it since I could listen to music up to this very day. I listened to it this morning. So thank you for making that record. Well,
if you have it, I could go on about it. If you have any specific questions, I could go on and forever on it. But
cool. Well, let's talk about. But let's start at the beginning. First of all, most importantly, you have a new release called "The Songs That Made Charlene Cry," and as a fan, I love the title because it was a running joke when you guys would be on the show as the Darling Boys. You would say the first one, dirty me, I'm disgusted with myself. Oh, Pa, that one always makes me cry. And so you've actually written the songs to the titles that you've used on the show.
Well, yes, we have. As a matter of fact, when COVID hit, Beverly and I were just sort of wandering around the house with our dog, and we decided I'd been wanting to do this for 40 years, and just, it was one of those things, I'll do it someday. And then I looked at my age and said, I better get to it.
Yeah.
So
it was something to do.
Yeah, Beverly and I sat there, and to keep from burying each other in a shallow grave in the backyard, we wrote this.
Yeah, COVID was tough on all of us. I'm married too.
Yeah.
You can, of course, pick this up at rodneydillard.tv, and there's a lot of great merch there. There's a book about your experiences on the Griffith Show and some of your more recent releases. So go to rodneydillard.tv. All right. Am I going to offend you because you called yourself this on the album? You're a hillbilly from Salem, Missouri. Am I allowed to call you a hillbilly, or am I going to get canceled?
Well, no, you're very much allowed because, it was originally Hill Williams when William was still king over there in Great Britain. And people who came from that genre actually were called Hill Williams because they lived in the mountains.
Had no idea. Is that for true?
Yes.
That's so cool. Well, you're my favorite Hill William there is then. So you grew up in Salem. How did you get started in music? Was it your father that got you sort of started with it?
Well, what happened? Well, I'll take you back as far as I can.
Great.
I can remember that some of my relatives around there in the Ozarks, that was our form of entertainment. Okay. If you picked a little bit, if you got together. And my dad was one of those old-timey fiddle players, like, what's that fiddle player you played with?
Tommy Gerald.
Tommy Gerald, which is a North Carolina icon. And my dad played like that. And being from West Tennessee, he moved up and married my mother, and she played guitar. So I grew up hearing guitar and fiddle. I was imprinted that probably long before I had a memory.
That's awesome. What did your father do for a living?
He was a government meat inspector.
Wow. Okay, cool. So he was not like Ebo Walker, who just traveled the fields and looking for drinking and playing his fiddle. So that's
No,
good.
but I had uncles like that.
Okay. I had to know they would be inspired somewhere. So
Well, we
it was,
always, when we wrote songs, Mitch, Jane, and I, we wrote about what was around us, not necessarily always Moon, June, Spoon, or
Right.
unrequited love or that, but we wrote about characters. And then when we got in more mature and got involved in relationships that didn't work, then we got more into BLM,
yeah,
BLS, bummer love songs.
Oh, okay, yeah, that does sort of creep in. I hear that. So you're there. You're with your brother Douglas, the late Doug Dillard, who is
Yes.
Just Google the words Doug Dillard and it'll come right up. Greatest banjo player ever, and I got no argument with that. So it's just fantastic. And how did you get together with the rest of the boys? And ultimately, it seems like an awful large hop to go from Missouri to Los Angeles.
Was it? I'll
Yeah.
try to give you the key in this because I don't want to wander off into the weeds.
That's all right.
Let me jump into high school when Doug and I were playing. Dad got Doug a banjo for Christmas, got me a guitar later. And the way we got really into music is my mother had a guitar she put behind the couch. And she would leave to go somewhere and she'd say, "Don't you touch that guitar." And of course, she knew what she thought she was doing.
Right, of course.
So anyway, high school, Douglas and I played around different places, made a couple of records in Illinois with people when we got into it. The learning part of it, I'll skip to meeting up with Miss Jane and Dean Webb. I had, for some reason, had gotten some scholarships for some, I don't know. But anyway, I didn't do any of those, and I decided to go to Southern Illinois University. So I spent 1 year there, and about 2 weeks before finals, I felt like a stranger in a strange land. What am I doing here? What is this all about? It wasn't my reality. Maybe it wasn't reality. I don't know. But what happened was I said, I can't do this. That time we were playing, country bars and places like that, where they put up a plank and two stumps and serve beer. And it's some of those real head knocking places. And that's where we met John Harford, who came into the picture later on.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so when I got out, when I told Doug, I said, "Doug, let's go do something." Well, in the interim, while I was still in high school, I met Mitch. But I met him because he got into bluegrass and was a DJ there in Salem, which ran on 2 flashlight batteries. And so I traded him a banjo lesson for a dog. He gave me a dog, and the dog proceeded to try to eat dog. Well, it was a boxer that proceeded to try to eat my neighbor's horses and my own horses.
Well, that's a bad trade, Rodney.
Well, he didn't get best in the deal because I taught him how to play the banjo, so it was both lose. Neither one won.
Okay, yeah, it was a lose-lose. I hear you.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
you're going around and you're playing these gigs and you're learning each other because you would eventually become an awesomely tight band. So did you tour around the Midwest and the Ozarks before you headed out?
No. Doug and I, like I said, we played these places, and then
they had to sneak you in, didn't you?
Yeah, we had to sneak me into these places because I was underage. But what happened was Doug and I, someone in St. Louis, Missouri, heard us playing somewhere. I think we just played on the street at some folk gathering, something. I don't. And he took us into his place, and we recorded an album, which later became an album, which I released later on in years. And we took this back to Mitch's house because we'd known Mitch and we were partying together and all that stuff. And he listened to that and he said, "Wow." I said, "Yeah, Doug and I are going to go to LA because Nashville, bluegrass was treated as the unwanted stepchild of Nashville, really."
Yeah, because if you think of in 1960, it was going to pure country at that point. They were sort of divergent, right?
And it was all kicked off the same. It was much of the same thing over and over, just like all music can become once you hit something that works for all the corporate people, and then they just beat it to death till it goes away. And some brave person comes in and changes it, much to the slings of arrows of purists. So anyway, what happened was we decided to go. I quit school. Doug quit his job. Now, Dean Webb came into the picture because he was a friend of ours who was a friend of someone who played on a local television station that went all over the state. Okay. And so we met Dean. He came down and started picking with us. And then when Mitch heard this record, that we made, he called his sister, who at the time was the assistant to David Wolper Productions. Well, back in those days, that was a big company.
Sure.
And he said, well, let's go to LA. And I said, yeah, because I didn't want to go to Nashville, right?
Right.
So we all had to make that decision. So we jumped in a 55 Cadillac, a one-wheel trailer, and with a Thanksgiving turkey, because we left 2 days before, and about $60, and headed for Los Angeles.
Perfect.
Now, I'm not. This is very true. I can embellish it and make it funny, but it was sad. Anyway, we got as far as Oklahoma City, and we're starving, because $60, we weren't used to large sums of money like that. We ran through it in about 2 weeks.
Oh no!
So we got there. We started looking for things to do. I can remember Dean Webb and I fighting over crackers in a wastebasket that somebody threw away and didn't open.
Wow!
And finally, I took the last $1.25 we had, got a haircut, put on a suit that I brought with me, and got us all jobs.
Oh, excellent! Good for you.
They were at Manpower. They were those places where everybody off the street went in and we were always the last ones to get the job because they knew all the homeless people there, and they give them the jobs first.
Okay, very good.
So we appeared on television there more, I think, we have anywhere because, there are meanwhile workers unloading license plates from da-da-da, and there we'd be, darlings. So a man took pity on us. We played for him, and he liked what he heard. He owned a club called the Boot Eye, which is a circuit for all the folk people to play.
Okay.
The Smothers, you name it, who were the folky wokies back then. And we played, got enough money, $300, that we took off for L.A. Got to L.A. The rest of this is another story, but getting there was fun. So we got there, checked into the Melrose Motel in Hollywood, which was rented by the hour.
Oh, well, that's a classy place then.
Oh, boy, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and a young man, I heard sounds I'd never heard before. So anyway, we went into a club there that was called the Ash Grove, which was the petri dish of intellectual gathering. It was, all the big folky people there,
Sure.
I can remember walking in that door for the first time, and somebody came up to me and said, "What do you think of the existential dilemma?" And I said, "I don't know. I was raised Baptist." True. So anyway, the guy came out. We had taken out our instruments to play. Boom, started playing. He said, "You can't do this here." Ed Pearl, he said, "Do it on stage." So I think we went on stage and jammed with, maybe it was the Greenbrier Boys. I know that we had a moment of our own.
Right.
Cut to the chase. Jim Dixon, who later on was very influential in a lot of people's careers, like the Byrds, the Eagles, and all those folks. We signed with Elektra Records because Jim was there. Jack had seen us. We signed with William Morris, which is Andy's agency, the biggest art in the world. This happened within a week.
Wow.
This is great. Yeah, don't try this at home. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that.
Wow.
So here we were. They put a blurb in Variety magazine that says, Elektra Records signs these weird guys from the Ozark who play this weird kind of music. And Andy, knowing what it was looking at a script of The Darlings Are Coming.
Okay.
And
so this is
read
Andy
that,
Griffith
said,
on the set of the show. Right.
Yeah. And he said, okay, call them boys up. So they did. We went over to Desilu Studios, right?
Okay.
I just knocked over my laptop. Hang on.
We
went over to Desilu Studios. And walked in, and there was Desmond, and there were all the performers at the time, the big dogs on the three networks, right?
Dick Van Dyke.
So we walked in where Andy was shooting an episode. I don't remember for sure what it was, but anyway, he and Bob Sweeney stopped shooting, sat down in front of us, and we started playing a number. They just sat there in the folding chairs on the live stage, just nothing. And Andy slapped his knees and got up, and I told my brother, I said, they're kicking us out.
Oh, yeah.
He says, "Where are you going?" He said, "Where are you going, boys? You got the job." We were only supposed to do one. Obviously, when Sheldon Leonard came by on the second episode and we were in the commissary, he said, "Boys, these letters represent 150,000 peoples for each letter, and this is what they think of you." And it was a big stack of them. So that's how that happened. And of course, after that, you know how Hollywood, well, maybe you don't. If you don't, you're lucky. How it works, we started to get hot then with the agency, and we started to do all the show. Judy Garland, Tennessee Ernie, all those things back then. So that's how we moved in to that whole thing. And I didn't go home for 2 years.
How long from your arrival into Los Angeles, Hollywood, to getting the gig on the Andy Griffith Show? Like, it seemed like it was a week. Was it that fast?
One,
Couple of weeks,
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks.
Wow. God, I
Yeah, I
had no
know.
idea it was that. Now, when Andy signed you, and I'll call him Andy because that everyone, or Ange, because he's that to everybody. He signed you, and there was something particular about your contract, is that he let you keep the rights to your music, right?
God bless him. He was so kind to us. The Andy Griffith that I knew was really a kind soul and a very spiritual soul. He said, "Now, boys, you're not going to make any money as musicians,
As actors.
as actors."
Yeah.
And he said, "You'll be musicians on this because you won't
Uh-huh.
talk." We made $300 a show, and he said,
Wow.
"I'll get all your songs on that you can do." So therefore, hence came songs that made Charlene cry. Let's
Right.
do Will You Love Me When I'm Old and Ugly? No, that makes me cry. Well, let's do Dooley. Let's do There Is a Time.
That is
And that's how
so
that happened.
great. Now, let me ask a question, because just to let you know that I'm a total music nerd, I actually have 2 Dillards 45s in my jukebox. And one of them is Nobody Knows, and it's backed with Ebo Walker, but that's on Capitol. Was that before you signed at Elektra?
Wow. You have a jukebox?
I do. I do.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
I'll send you a pic.
Actually, we were on Elektra. We did 3 albums on Elektra. The first
Right.
one was Back Porch Bluegrass, which all the people in New York and people who had just discovered country people thought they were quaint and wanted to put them in their little museum and do all
Sure.
that stuff and be intellectual about them.
Mhm.
And really didn't understand stale beer in the parking lot, and all that sort of stuff.
I hear you.
They just blasted that album. Since when do they have echo chambers on the back porch?
You don't live in the
They
mountains.
don't live in the mountains, just like
That's
I do
right.
now. So we had problems that we did. The next one was called Live Almost, which was showing the comedic aspect of what we did, which was advised by, we had to establish ourselves.
Sure.
If you're playing bluegrass to an urban audience, you want to make sure that you can get their attention.
Mhm.
And so Mitch and I developed this thing that we did, this comedy thing. So on the third album, we decided to do something very esoteric and just down. So long story, but we discovered Byron Berline in Oklahoma. He was going to college there, the fiddle
Right.
player. So
Sure,
we did.
the
We
best.
brought him to L.A. We did a whole album of nothing but, classic fiddle tunes.
Mhm.
That's all it is. It's an album of fiddle tunes. And I forgot who wrote the liner notes. Somebody from the what's that place in D.C. we always go see?
The
big
Wolf Trap?
place. No, the museum. What do you say?
Oh, the Smithsonian.
Smithsonian.
The Smith. That's it. The Smith.
Yeah,
One of the
that's
big
the
buildings.
one.
Got all that kind of stuff.
Big building.
Got the Hope Diamond in it.
Yeah, that's the one.
And Tommy Gerald.
And Tommy Gerald.
Yeah.
He later on went to be an official there at the Smithsonian, and
It was a big shot.
yeah, oh yeah, he did. Well, that's another story. We stayed at his apartment in New York for 3 months when they sent us out there. That was another experience.
Wow.
But we did that, and then for some reason, I wasn't happy. I knew I'm not happy. I'm happy now. But we moved. I was wanting to do something different. I didn't want to stay into that total bluegrass thing because I was young, and it wasn't that I had already set up like concrete mentality. And I wanted to try different things. I wanted to do what I'd always felt like when I was a kid. If I could take this music, keep the basic of it, the integrity of it with the triad harmonies and the emotion of it. And so I went to Capitol with Jim Dixon's. We signed with Capitol. We did. It wasn't a pleasant experience with Capitol because they gave us producers who didn't know us they didn't know what to do with us,
Right.
If you got a toothpaste, you know how to sell toothpaste.
Right.
But if you got a Dillard paste, you don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So they didn't know. So when we started in on the set, we did two singles. Nobody Knows.
Mm-hmm.
The Reason to
Reason to
two other
Believe
ones.
was on Elektra, I think. But those are the 245s I have in my jukebox.
No,
right
Reason
now,
to Believe was actually, you know what? I don't remember. Maybe it was.
But it was
Yes,
at
it
the
was.
same era,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Right.
you're right. So we did 2 or 3 on Capitol. At that time, we were still strong enough. We went back to Elektra.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then
Wow.
Jack took us back, God bless him.
Mhm.
And we did, that was Wheat Straw Suite. I sat in the valley, in my back room, and I had a little bitty piano. It was like a big piano and a little. And started working out with note by note on a Struder 15 IPS recording machine, and sound on sound back then. I started putting together these ideas for
Right.
Wheat Straw Suite, with the rocking chair and that old man saying, well, it's coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
That's a real guy in the Ozarks.
That's so
And it wasn't
cool.
an actor. We actually got him to put that on there.
No,
So Wheat Straw developed slowly like that. And that's
is
how that happened.
so cool. My opinion, when people ask me, I have a copy of Wheat Straw. I have my favorite albums, extra copies, framed in my home. And people they tend to ask about Wheat Straw Suite. And they say, what is this? Who is this? Why is this on your honorary wall? I said, if you can imagine bluegrass music, these 2 albums, Wheat Straw Suite and Copperfields, to me are the Rubber Soul and Revolver of bluegrass. They're
Oh my
2
God.
Wow.
adjacent albums that almost bleed into each other. They're similar, but they connect the first albums to what we have to come, just like with the Beatles. And they are so forward thinking that is how I've sold it to people along the way, is that those are 2 transitory albums, not just for you and the band, but for bluegrass and electric country.
Country
entirely.
rock.
Wow. Well, that's I'm almost out of words here, but I'll make up for it.
Oh, trust me, he will.
Was that a question that you've never been asked before? Was that something that you've not heard before?
I've never heard it like that.
Yes.
No,
Woo! That's me.
yeah, that I'll tell you that gets me. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I know that you have to have a tremendous respect for the Beatles. You've done the covers.
Oh,
and
they were-
just you know what, I'm going so out of order here. Let's put a pin in this, because I just want to ask, when you were I have one more question about the Andy Griffith Show. Did Andy rehearse with you when you were doing it? Because he played along with you on the show, but did he actually rehearse when you were doing the pre-records?
Well, you knew we were doing the pre-records. I was
Right.
going to tell you, most people didn't know we were Millie Vanilli back then, but yeah, we'd go into Glenn Sound Studios, and he would come in there with us, because he was on top of everything. Andy made that show work.
Yeah, of course.
You have a lot of other influences and a lot of other opinions, but he knew what played right, because he grew up in that kind of environment where everything played a little slower. There wasn't these one-line zingers like the, it was slow comedy, but it was closer to reality.
So perfect.
So,
you
he was
cared
in there
about
with-
every character. And I don't know
Yeah.
that
Yes.
any other sitcom, maybe Ted Lasso recently kind of approached it, to have such a just a stack of characters, and you cared about all of them. And that's in the writing, because you feel you know them, even from 1 or 2 lines. And I think you're right. The pacing puts you in the sense of real life as well.
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, that's the way I see it. But yeah, that was all such an interesting thing to do. That you went back to Wheat Straw. Don Henley, once some famous record mogul now lives in Nashville. I can't remember what his name. Forgive me. But he took the Wheat Straw Suite to Don when he was in college. Was walking up the stairs and said, "Don, you got to hear this album."
Wow.
And that's how that helped begin my relationship with Henley, and he hearing us.
And you've worked with him throughout, right?
Not throughout. He was my next door neighbor for a while in L.A. when he was working with Lynn Ronstadt and all of that.
Okay, all right.
This is before, when he came into L.A. He came to see us, drove through a snowstorm in Texas to come to see me, the Dillards.
Wow.
And that's when Herb Peterson was with me with all that great harmony.
Yes.
And that's where I first become acquainted with him. And he's always been an incredible writer. Even in I have a tape that he sent me when I got back to L.A. of his first writings. And, he's an incredible talent.
Yeah, well, all of you together. I'm sure you probably don't remember me, but I saw you at the Barns of Wolf Trap in 1990. It's the one time I've seen the band, and that was when it was you, Mitch, and Dean, and Steve Cooley was the 4 musicians on stage at that time.
It was Steve. Yeah, another great player.
It's a magnificent show. It's a great place to see a show, the Barns of Wolf
Yeah,
Trap
it is.
here in D.C., but You guys were so on, and you sounded just like your records, which brings me to the next question. There is so much in pop music and even country music now where they're trying to alter voices and put distortion to make the stuff sound different. To me, the magic of the Dillards recordings, at least earlier on, was the clarity. You could banjos sounded like bells. Your voice is as pure as and as sweet as anything I can imagine. And you mix it. And so engineers now that are trying to distort the way the music sounds, when you capture it, it sounds so live. And I think, is that part of what makes bluegrass work?
It did at one time before where AI took over,
Right.
And now I could say to Gemini or Gork or one of those things, write a song similar to Dooley, but not get sued.
Okay. Yeah, you could.
And then they do it.
Yeah,
so and of course we won't get into these weeds, but recording, because I ran a recording studio here in Branson, Missouri. How long? 10 years?
About 10 years, yeah.
And you also produced so many of the albums, or co-produced it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I would always include the engineer, if I could on something like the Sweet Straw Suite. But yes, today you have pitch correction. Now we're in court. I just talked to my publisher about them. They call it scraping off. They take sound bites from records and then they manipulate them and put them into their record. And it's happening now big time.
Wouldn't it be easier just to write a song? They should just write a song is what they should do.
Well, a lot of what you're hearing now is you don't hear that kind of talent. I sound like an old guy. Well, they don't make them like
Well, we're both old guys. I'm the one who brought it up.
Yes.
So it's okay.
Well, you're on top of all that. You've got the radar and the intelligence to know all that stuff. But the like Prine, even Dylan, all Waits, all those guys back then, they spoke from the heart and they spoke from and now it's just manufactured stuff. It's just manufactured like making soap.
Yeah. Without getting, like you said, into the weeds, if you download, say, the new, and I love Lady Gaga. I'm not casting any aspersions on her.
I understand.
If you download a Lady Gaga record and put it into editing software, it looks like 2 blocks. Everything is maxed out to volume. It's just ba, 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 ba. That's the sound they have now. And if I were to take, say, an analog copy of Back Porch Bluegrass and put that into the editing software, you'd see dynamics. You'd see the actual sound of the way the music was captured. And you never see that anymore. It's just that purity of sound. I think it's so intriguing and inviting and wonderful. And you guys have captured it and had captured it for many years. So thank you for that.
That's incredible. You're really on top of this because I have tried through every album, even up to this one, is keep it as pure and the dynamics. I'm not trying to promote myself. Well, maybe I am, but I'm proud
That's why
of
you're
the
doing
fact.
the interview, Rodney.
Well, the fact that on this last album, if you'll listen, those players, they're all my pals, and some of them are in my band with Beverly and I, that they are listening to the lyric. They listen to the lyric and they play according to the lyric and according to what the other person's do. They didn't go in there and just, bore hog it out, as we used to say.
Right.
Throw up on the tape.
Yeah, they didn't throw up on the tape, right? They really listened and they made music. It's real music. It's not manufactured. And
well, it's one of the things that I'm sorry, go ahead, Beverly.
Are you familiar with what Rodney calls the bookend to Sweet Straw Suite, the album before this, Old Road New Again?
I'm not familiar with that second album.
Well,
no.
Henley came and flew in and was supposed to sing 1 song, ended up singing 3.
Wow.
And Bernie Ledden was on it, Ricky Skaggs, Sam Bush, just friends through the years. And Bill Vorndick from the DC area produced it. And it's one of his last ones, not the very last, but you would be, we'll have to send you one of those because I'd
love it.
That's that kind of sound to capture. And Rodney feels like it was the bookend.
That's so awesome. It really is something you just don't see anymore, is capturing the music the way it sounds when it's performed. I applaud you for, these recordings will last forever and people will know how fine the music is and was. Talking about Don Henley, he's not the only big star you encountered. How did it come to pass that you opened for Elton John? That doesn't seem like a fit.
Well, we had just we had just. Oh, he was so gracious to us. He was very nice to us.
Really
gracious man. Yes, he. We left Elektra and signed up with United Artists.
Okay.
And there was a producer that they assigned to us, Richie Podler, who had produced Three Dog Night, Steppenwolf, Blues Image, goes on and on. And he produced this Roots and Branches that we did.
Right.
And we were playing the Troubadour, which was, of course, the place to play in L.A. when you were there.
Sure. Famous.
And Elton came in on the first show, sat through the first show, went to see somebody, came in on the second show.
Wow.
And saw us. Didn't say anything, left. Next thing I know, he had contacted our managers and our record company and said he's coming on this tour. He's
First American tour.
And he wanted us to do it with him.
I didn't know it was his first tour. So he
I think
came
it was
over
Honky,
from England and
Honky Chateau.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That is so cool. How did his audience receive you when you did the shows?
You know what? Being the opening act for somebody like that, when they always yell at you to, get on with it. They loved us. We would get, here I go being arrogant again, Beverly.
No, you're not. You're just telling the truth. He doesn't know who he is. He never has.
But the thing of it is, we get these standing ovations, and that opened up a whole new audience to us. A whole new bunch of people who never knew what this kind of music that we were doing was, which in the long run introduced a lot of those folks to bluegrass. Just like the Andy Griffith Show did.
And it sort of stemmed into the country rock that happened in the 70s. You were already doing it. I mean, it's a mind blower. Also, Steve Martin picked up the banjo because of you guys. I mean, how about that? He's still playing the banjo on tour.
Steve is another one of those guys. Well, he opened for us at a place called Ledbetter's in West Hollywood.
Okay.
When he was doing his balloon act.
Sure, I remember.
Yeah, well, it's a small world, but he is also a friend of John McEwen's, who is a dear friend of mine from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
Mm-hmm.
So
who credits you with him playing music in the first place?
I reckon.
He does. John says that he used to sneak out and go see them so much, and his mother said, "Why don't you just change your last name to Dillard?" He said, "Is that a possibility?"
But that's how I first met Steve, and he turned into an incredible player.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
Yeah, he is.
Just amazing.
Even I'm a clawhammer player, and I'd heard him play bluegrass, but when I heard him play clawhammer, boy, he's touched the stone somewhere.
Okay, I've got to ask this because I've heard of clawhammer before. I know not what it is. What style of banjo is clawhammer?
Well, it's really the original way of playing the banjo. I mean, when it came from Africa, it only had 2 strings. You played with 1 finger and a thumb. Later in this country, the 5th string was added, more strings, and they would play with that 1 finger, thumb, and then it developed into a style where your hand is literally shaped like a claw, and you hammer on the strings using that 1 finger and drop thumbing and using the thumb. It's called frailing, clawhammer,
I would
knocking the banjo, the old timers.
That's probably what I hear when I hear the strings almost like ringing out, almost like a bell. They're wide open on that. Is that why it sounds like that?
No, you can play now. Grandpa Jones, it's the style Grandpa Jones played, but he played chords mainly, maybe with a couple of pull-offs. The way I learned from Tommy Gerald, the North Carolina fiddle player, he actually was a great banjo player. He taught all of us kids in Mount Airy, where Andy grew up, this was the music that Andy grew up with. He taught us to play fiddle and banjo just sitting in his living room for nothing. He would feed us kids and we'd sleep on the floors and play. And they actually gave him a presidential award for all those years of doing that.
Wow.
And that was the sound. And you can tell from that, because you're not just playing chords in that real style, you're backing up a fiddle player.
Okay.
You're playing the lines and you're kind of matching the tune with the fiddle player.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I have one banjo joke. It's nothing personal. And it's how many strings on a banjo? 5 too many. So
well, how about there's the seldom heard words. There's the banjo player's Porsche.
That's also very good.
And back in my days when Doug and I were looking for pickers and stuff, you'd have to drive 500 miles to find a banjo player. Wow. And now I have to drive that far to get away from one.
Hey.
All right, you mentioned Grandpa Jones. I know you've worked with amazing people, and I've heard you referred to as a second generation bluegrass artist.
That's crazy.
But that's what I saw. But because of that, you serve as a link to the present, to some of the people in the past. Like, what can you tell me? Did you ever get a chance to work with Bill Monroe? I actually feel bad not saying his full name, which is bluegrass legend Bill Monroe, because that's how he's always referred to. Did you ever work with him?
I knew Bill. My brother worked with him, and they were friends. I got stories. I think somebody published one about him. We went to England. We all flew over together on one plane because we played the big Wembley festival over there.
Okay, yeah.
And he had all the energy in the world. But the person that I did tour with and record with was Earl Scruggs.
I was going to ask about him next, and that you actually worked with him. You played on the Bonnie and Clyde soundtrack.
Oh yeah, cool? That's another whole story.
Yeah,
that's
because he had the hit with Foggy Mountain Breakdown, but on the incidental music, it was you and Doug playing, right?
Well, I'll make this as quickly as possible, but
we got nothing
story.
But time, Rodney. We got nothing but time.
We were in Warner Brothers studio playing the picture, right?
Right.
When they put the picture up and they have the cues and stuff, and they had this big conductor up there with a huge orchestra. They had me, Glenn Campbell, and Tommy Tedesco, who was big at the time, the big guy. And
from the Wrecking Crew. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were all sitting in a circle, and this big orchestra was behind us, right? Mm-hmm. And they were handing out this sheet music that none of us could read. So I had a solo coming up at the end. It's all source music now, but it was called Who's Snoring Now? It's one scene, I think, before they were all asleep when they got attacked.
Okay.
But it was all atonal and arrhythmic. It's like jazz.
Right.
And I took it to Tommy, and I said, Tommy, play this for me. I had a good audio memory, and he played the thing for me. And so I learned to play it again, so I could play that at the end. And man, I'm telling you, I was sweating like you wouldn't believe there. And I couldn't make a mistake. You don't make a mistake in that situation.
Because they're going right to film. Oh my gosh.
Well, we were getting along, and we had this funky, we were doing the chase scenes, right? We did the chase, and they had this funky tenor banjo playing behind us, just wrecking it all. And it was also, there was the legitimacy. There it went into just
like
bluegrass music.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. And that's no good.
So what happened, I felt this tug, and it was Warren Beatty. He says, what's wrong with this? And I said, well, and I was pitching us, right? I said, you need to get me and Doug and Glenn and let us go in and cut real bluegrass for you.
Right.
He said, that's what it needs? He said, yeah. Okay. There was a time, my memory is not real clear on this, but we pulled up in front of the theater there on Hollywood Boulevard. It might have been, no, it's a smaller theater there. They were doing a preview of it, right?
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Beatty comes out. I parked my car and right there in the park and got out with it. He said, you know what we did? We found an old
They took your advice.
We took your advice. They found an old cut of flat Scruggs called Foggy Mountain Breakdown.
Right.
That's how that happened.
Well,
I've always been in that position.
That is so cool. And the Foggy Mountain Breakdown was recorded in the 50s, but charted when the movie came out. It was.
Isn't that amazing?
That had to be a tremendous feather in the bluegrass cap, the fact that that classic recording was actually being played on the radio. That had to feel great.
Yeah, it was. I was a little, you might say at that time, a little disappointed that we didn't get the opportunity to do something, but I'm glad it worked out. It probably worked out for the best the way it happened, because things do. Because it was old-timey and had that analog sound.
I have the 45 myself.
Everybody works one microphone, you know. But that's how that happened.
That's the purity, too. You know, one microphone is how you hear. That's, you know, you're not boosting stuff. You're playing live, real music that doesn't seem to exist anymore.
Back to the thing you were talking about earlier, what has happened when it came into digital ones and zeros,
right?
The resonant frequency of the human ear cannot handle digital. It trashes your ears. Mm-hmm. When I had to mix digitally, I'd mix for a half hour and go home, say, I'm coming back and mix again.
Because it fries your head, right? Yeah.
It fries your head. And you know why everybody started buying the old microphones? they go to a radio station, find the old 44s, and is because it's distortion. Analog is distortion to the human ear.
Okay, that makes it now. And
that distortion is a warmth.
That's my 44
right
there.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've got a 77. I've got every way to amplify a voice that no one wants to hear, mine. But I love the fact that I started buying classic microphones before they really turned, and I got some of them inexpensive. And now my wife just wants to sell them. I said, wait till I'm dead, then you can sell them. But they're all beautiful, and they all work, and they have a sound unlike anything you can do with modern stuff.
And that's what that is. When you started hearing Dire Straits in Chicago coming in with that snare drum that pierced your ears like a...
Right.
That digital destroyed... That's why everybody's doing vinyl again now.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Now, I should mention... you were inducted into the Bluegrass Hall of Fame, 2009. The Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame, the Bill Monroe Bluegrass inducted 2022. You're in the Country Music Hall of Fame, 2 Grammy nominations. It blows my mind that I get to sit here and talk to you. So thank you for that. You are really a big part of my life. Now, let's talk a little music. We talked about the Andy Griffith Show, and I think MeTV, you're probably on right now. So go over and watch. As soon as the interview's over, watch. Okay, so I went through, and these are roughly in chronological order, and these are all purchased when they released. And we start, of course, with, I get this shot here, Back Porch Bluegrass. And I want to read a quote from the Denver Post. The Denver Post, when this album came out, said, without a doubt, this is the best bluegrass recording anybody has produced so far. How did that feel when that review came out?
Well,
you look like you probably didn't take the Denver Post. So you didn't
everybody has opinions, and
right.
not all opinions are always true. Truth is a very elusive thing.
So do you agree that it was at that time the best bluegrass record ever produced?
No.
Okay.
I don't agree.
Great. Okay.
Because I sound like Shirley Temple on it. I sound like I'm 3 years old. Dooley was a good old man living up.
I think the fact is that Denver probably not the hot seat for bluegrass. Maybe that's the problem. I want to ask you a few questions about individual songs on it, if I may. You start off the album with, the second song on the album is Somebody Touched Me, which was a gospel offering. Great sing-along. I've sung it in church myself. Was it hard to tell the people at Elektra that you're going to put a gospel song on a record? Because that doesn't really sell back then, does it?
No, and you know what? Jack never questioned it. God bless him. Jack never we never questioned. As a matter of fact, go back. On the Judy Garland show we did, I got her to sing "Somebody Touch Me" with me.
Wow, really? You sang with Judy Garland?
Yeah. Yep. If you pull it up, you can on YouTube. And it's there.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Now, this is a 1963 album. You went on the Andy Griffith Show in March of 63. Was this album prior or after the Griffith Show?
I don't know.
Because it has to be awfully close, because this is the first time we've heard you sing Dooley is on this. And we have a clip here from the Andy Griffith Show.
Oh, that's a good one. A 1, a 2, and away we go.
And this is you performing Dooley on the Griffith Show.
Now Dooley was a good old man, he lived below the mill. Dooley had 2 daughters and a party gal, and still one gal watched the boiler and the other watched the spout. And Mama corked the bottles when old Dooley fetched them out. Dooley slipping up the holler, Dooley trying to make a dollar.
So
Dooley,
great.
Give
Oh
me
my
a
gosh.
dollar and I'll pay you back someday.
So that
was the kids.
I'm sorry, let me remove that. What is it like to see yourself captured in beautiful, high definition black and white film at that age doing what you love? That's got to be one of the greatest feelings in the world.
I think so.
It's okay.
It just looked like our kids and grandkids.
Yeah, they look like it's like our son when he was 18.
And you put the hat on our grandson, and he looked just like him.
When I was looking at that, I just realized for my 83rd birthday last week, my wife Beverly bought me a pair of bib overalls.
I didn't want to. I told him he couldn't go in public with me wearing them.
I love it. I love it. Now, I think what's great is that this is your first experience in front of a camera, and you absolutely nailed the character. I know you didn't have a lot of lines to memorize, but I find myself finding your face in the background. Like on the end of the first episode, when Charlene finally gets together, I think her boyfriend's name is Doug. He came back from the army, and while she's having this incredibly sweet moment where he saved a gladiola, off to the left is your face, the whole scene. And you're just like that the whole time.
You want to hear a secret? You want to hear a secret about that?
Of course.
I'm standing there with my thumbs in my bib overalls, right? I'm standing next to the door of the bus that's open. Genuine Tiger Irene's from Spokane. And he's giving her all this stuff. Right. Did you know I thought it was only my shoulder that was on camera, and I didn't know I was on camera.
It's a long shot of you right there. It's so
I know.
great.
You know that. Don't you tell anybody.
I won't tell anybody.
Right.
But yeah, I look at that. Watch my eyes. They're darting because I was watching the scene go down.
And he has a rubber face. It's always worked for him.
And I did realize one thing, too. When we first did the first one, I looked at the other guys, and they were all trying to look mean. Yeah. You know, they're all looking different. And I'm going... Because I thought maybe that would stand out from everybody else.
I love it. I love it. Now, I want you to know that I've been a DJ for about 33 years now, 34. And every February 2nd, I try to play the song Groundhog in some way for Groundhog Day. So when you get that 5-cent check, that's from me. Now, also when you did this Back Porch Bluegrass, you did, I guess, the first recording of Old Man at the Mill, and you did it faster. Is that, how did that develop? Because I know we're going to visit again later, and that was my first, one of the first songs I sang as a boy.
Same old man.
Living at the mill. And also it's got the dance instructions in it. You know, ladies step forward and the gents fall back.
Gents fall back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that an original song of your guys that you just tried in that tempo, or what happened?
Well, at the time, this is really odd, but Beverly, all those people, she's from Appalachia. She's in North Carolina, you know, who gave up being a child psychologist to play the banjo.
Yep. Made my daddy real happy.
I bet.
And she knew all of these people. Clarence Ashley.
Yeah.
This is for the real, you know, the real depth of what folk music, what real mountain music was. Mm-hmm. Clarence Ashley, Doc Watson,
Tommy Gerald.
Well, I learned that from Clarence Ashley. He came out to L.A. when we were at that Petri dish of folk culture that I was telling you about.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And we all stayed in Ed Pearl's beach house out there. He had crammed us all in there. And it was Roscoe Holcomb, me, Doc, and all these guys. And I learned that from them.
Wow.
I learned that song. I thought, boy, that's a neat tune.
It is a neat tune.
I've watched people who've taken it apart, you know, writers and things going, what does it mean, mill turns of its own free will?
Are you kidding?
Is that a sociological, that has something to do with the reflection of the...
it's a dance song, isn't it? I mean, that's essentially what it is.
I used to call square dances, and that's some of the square dance moves.
So great.
Yeah, she was in a group called the Green Grass Cloggers, which was...
And I performed at Wolf Trap a lot. We worked Philadelphia Folk Festival, all the Canadian festivals, and Wolf Trap a lot. And we all met in college in North Carolina.
Now, I think my favorite song on the album is Doug's Tune. And I actually did have it played at my wedding reception. That's for true. And this clip is so great because Briscoe, your father in name, is putting the moves on Aunt B. But I want people to hear what a great song it is. But if you're watching, watch Briscoe do some moves here.
2 and 1, 2.
It's a perfect record, Rodney. It's so good. Now Aunt B is set.
Oh, yeah.
So fantastic. What was Denver Pyle like to work with?
He was great. He has sat here at this very table we're talking to you from and visited me. And when I brought him on, I was working with Jim Stafford here in Branson, his show. And he came to visit me, and I brought him up on stage, and you thought Elvis had entered the building.
Really?
Oh, that's
People
great.
love Denver.
It was crazy.
Not to like.
He used to play a lot of. He had great humor. I got a story I tell, but it'd be much too long for this about him. One time when we were doing a scene, and he told me a story just before we burst into the sheriff's office, and had to keep a straight face. But that's another.
Was the set on the Griffith Show? Was it? I know Andy liked efficiency and he liked to get things done, but was it a happy set?
I can only speak from my experience.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
It was a very happy set.
That's
Andy
awesome
always made us feel totally comfortable. There was never, those moments later on in other shows that we did. You could cut the atmosphere with a knife. There would be this tension going on. And of course, doing the Andy Griffith Show, I thought they were all like that. So walking into the Judy Garland show was quite a shock.
I bet.
Oh,
God, it's so marvelous that your performances are captured. The last thing I want to ask you about Back Porch Bluegrass, and I just discovered this, so you may want to call Elektra Records. On the back cover, they misspelled dueling on banjos. There's a typographical error. Yeah, it is spelled on the back DEUL instead of DUEL.
Like a
so
truck.
Obviously, if the person who's still alive who did your copy, they
Oh
need to
my
be corrected.
gosh.
No,
I didn't know that. Is that a re-release or the old release?
No, this is the first release because it's almost in tatters. It's actually on None Such Records, which I guess is a part of Elektra, right?
One of Jack's subsidiaries.
That one had to be a re-release because it was out originally on Elektra.
Okay,
it didn't go to None Such was his classical label.
They got the
He
spelling
put it on
wrong.
his classical.
But the 1963 release of Duel and Banjo, everyone got to know it 10 years later when it was in Deliverance. And wasn't there a mess of lawsuits about dueling banjos?
Tell me.
Can you thumbnail it for me?
Yeah, I went to the door. They handed me this. So you're being served, and it was this big long thing with a blue paper in front, and it said, "You're being sued for $1 million." So I looked at it. And I thought that's kind of good. So I hung it in my bathroom next to the Destrada.
Well, it's a good reminder then. But did he sue the guy sued everybody, didn't he?
Oh, well, yeah, but here's the way it really happened. Make it quick. We went to New York, one of our first gigs. When I said we spent 3 months at Ralph Rensler's apartment, the guy, and we were playing one of those places. I can't remember. I've been there several times. Could have been Gertie's Folk City. I'll get it confused. I call it Ferdy's Goat City, but
that's not right.
No, it's wrong. But anyway, Eric Weisberg came downstairs. He was a fan. He came in to New York with Steve Mandel. They saw us play that. He heard it on the album that we cut on Elektra Records. And they went back thinking it was our song. And of course they did it in the album. And then when that movie came out and they found out it was nominated for Oscar, it wasn't eligible because of the problem. It wasn't original.
Oh, wow.
And if it hadn't been for the guy who owned half of Hollywood being our lawyer at the time, we got out of it. We got to keep our version.
Good.
But yeah, that was a huge deal. Columbine Music, New York guys got a hold of it and they smelled money and they went after it like a dadgum coon dog.
Okay, we go forward 1 year. It's 1964. And we mentioned it already, Live Almost. And I love this album for a lot of reasons, one of which is that it feels so informal. It feels like a comedy record of that era, that they go into a small club and record a Bob Newhart or someone like that. And because at least half the album is spoken. The great work by Mitch as the MC, carrying from song to song and doing the shtick with you on, I've lost my place here. But when you do the...
Mule.
That's it. Thank you. Some bucking mule. You absolutely play it like you you've done it a million times. It sounds like a comedy routine. And then you come in with this marvelous music. That had to be huge into sort of introducing what your shtick was to America worldwide, because it wasn't just pure music. It was also the comedy in between. You're right.
You're right on. It's like people who didn't like bluegrass and thought it was old hee-haw stuff. You had to feed like you would a kid's medicine into something that they liked.
Now,
which was comedy.
You did one of the first Bob Dylan covers. You did "Walking Down the Line" on that, which is, I mean, Bob Dylan red hot right now because he has a movie out, or a movie about him, which is very cool. But the song on this album that stands alone, and if this was the only song you ever recorded, I think you would still be deserving of high praise, is the song "There Is a Time." It is chillingly beautiful. And it has stayed with me from seeing it. I mean, I've got several examples here. I didn't know, I'll start with this. I didn't know that Andy sang it solo on an episode.
Charlene, and
yeah. One time is young, and so are we.
I like it. I prefer the Charlene version, of course. I mean, there's so much going on musically here. Her voice is beautiful.
There is a time for love and laughter. The days will pass like summer storms. The winter wind will follow after. But there is love, and love is warm.
It's just so pretty. Now, you wrote that song.
Mitch and I wrote that song, and I can't remember if it was on the first album or not. It was on a second. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was on Live Almost. And
okay, so we had already been on a couple of shows, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there was a piece written on the back of the album that bluegrass purists would turn their nose up at it because it was different. I don't know why they thought it was different. I think it has a lot to do with the fact you don't hear a lot of bluegrass in minor. It's got a depth and almost, I don't mean this in a bad way, an inherent sadness. There is regret in that song. And you've captured it so well lyrically and musically. How did it feel when you heard that song come to life? Because it's really remarkable.
It's been amazing over the years. I go on YouTube now. I have a lot of time on my hands, and I hear different people all over the world do this song. I heard a heavy metal group do it.
Yeah, and it's pretty. A good song is a good song, regardless.
Yeah,
didn't a ukulele orchestra? Did they do that one?
The Great British Ukulele Orchestra did.
And
one of those.
we do have it on the new album. We had to dedicate it.
Yeah, we did it, and I thought everybody had done it in a certain way, and I thought, it's been accompanied by all this stuff, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting? And I turned to Beverly and I said, would it be interesting if you just sang it almost a cappella and delivered the words without splitting focus with the music.
Fantastic.
And she did it with a banjo behind it.
Six-string banjo.
A six-string banjo.
I can't wait to hear it. It is really it's a striking song. It's really no other way to put it. How did you feel when Alan Jackson covered it? That had to feel pretty good.
That was cool.
Oh, I was really happy. I was real surprised that he did it. But when I found out how he had gotten into a lot of the music by listening to the Andy Griffith Show, just in the last few years, I began to realize maybe we did have some influence on. Really, don't laugh at me.
Of course, you're
kidding
me.
No, and it's been in steps from the last year. I'm beginning to understand that, and all of a sudden, I'm starting to accept some of those things, and it's helped me live life abundantly.
It's so much more than that. You've made other people live life joyously, which is also pretty good.
See, that's the point of the music. You don't want to. I always wanted to leave people with a good feeling. Mitch and I both did. Mm-hmm. There's enough that we can comment. Of course, I did do a commentary on the album before this one, but Ricky Skaggs helped me sing it. But
tearing our liberty down.
Tearing on it, but that's another story. So anyway, I wanted to see people be happy when they came to see us.
Sure.
And now when I go out, I want that fourth wall gone. I don't want audience. I want to be like I'm in the center of them, like when the Dillards used to swarm at Thanksgiving and Christmas and play music together.
Now, I got to know, is that sort of the feeling you have when you play the Mayberry Days festivals and things like that, when people come from around the nation to get together and celebrate the Andy Griffith Show? And I know you still do those. Is that the feeling you get among the crowd?
Yes. And it's an incredible thing to have that. It's real. It's not manufactured. It's not created by social media. It's what individual people saw when they watched that show, and those writers put into that reality of intrinsic family values.
Yeah,
which that is to me the cornerstone and the core of society. If you don't have that, you got a world full of sociopaths.
That's true. That's very true. All right, 1968, a few years later, and this is my favorite. This is, of course, Wheat Straw Sweet. There's one of the copies. I think this might have been my Uncle George's. I don't know. Just a couple questions. There's a credit on the back of this we hadn't seen yet, which is song and vocal arrangements and orchestral arrangements. So you're really sort of bringing in the big sound, right, on this? But it starts so simply with another song that I know from church, I'll Fly Away, with the harmony. Is that stacked harmony, or is that just the four of you?
We were the ones we started stacked harmony, really.
Oh,
back
my
then.
gosh.
Yeah.
And with Herb in there, when Herb came to the group, it just made things so much easier because it's, because of the human, he has almost like a pedal steel vocal lifts and stuff in it. He sings like a pedal steel, and it's just beautiful the way he added those things. And it gave me the freedom. I had no guilt about moving out of bluegrass and moving into, that was just exploring territory, not because I want to try to get a hit here. I just wanted to make music that I was hearing in my head, and I could get the other guys to and they did. They understood. And I guess all along
it sounds like the band as a rule got along. Did you all sort of have the same focus moving forward?
Oh, Mitch and I fought like dogs, cats and dogs.
Well, that's good, because that's like a brother would do, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, my brother and I fought like cats and dogs, too.
Well, that is your brother.
Dean didn't fight much. He was like a cat.
Okay.
He fought more like a cat than a dog. He was very subtle in his fights.
So on Wheat Straw Sweet, which, by the way, is an album that listens perfect from side A and all the way through to side B, you've got electricity on this one. You've got some electric instruments. You've also got big studio reverb. Where did you record the bulk of it? I'm curious.
That was cut at Gold Star Studios, which is a legendary studio. That was back then when you had dials. You didn't have faders. You had dials that you twisted. And we cut the basics in the little studio, and then we would go into the bigger studio where we put the orchestra and cut that and mixed it there on headphones.
That actually takes my breath away, because that's the same reverb that Phil Spector used on all of his fantastic Wall of Sound. He recorded at Gold Star as well, and it was known to have the best reverb in town, right?
So did Herb Alpert.
Yes. Oh God.
I went in there one day, and he had all his machines down there cutting, and that was back what Scully, I think we were using 8 tracks. Yeah, when they came in, we had Ampex before that. But yeah, everybody cut down there. A lot of the English groups. Who had that da-da-da-da-dum from England? That rhythm feel. Anyway, it was a hit back then.
It was an amazing facility. Now, also, you got drums on this album. You did what I would almost call a novelty record in the biggest whatever, which is, you've got no dialogue per se on this album, but your sense of humor comes through on that. And
you know how that came about?
No, please tell me.
There's a story about, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
I love it.
He'll forget.
Yeah, I'll forget. There was a fellow by the name of Bill Martin at the time who was a young guy. He was extremely talented guy. And he was living, Doug and I bought a house together, brothers, in the valley. Nice home. And we moved him in because he had no place to live, right? And supported him. Bill Martin and I wrote that together because it was all about things and experiences that happened in my hometown, Salem, Missouri. It was real experiences, okay?
Right.
And he started helping me put this. He later on, this inspired a thing that he did, that he wrote the movie, the Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh my gosh, really?
Well, Hollywood missed him out of a lot of that. He got something from it. But I'll tell you, he wrote that movie, that whole scene with the pepper when he got him out and sneezing. He acted that out in my kitchen one night.
That's so
before
funny.
It was ever written down.
That's great.
Well, Bill became a voiceover. He did everybody's voiceover, just incredible. Pepsi's everything, and he wrote a lot of stuff for the Fifth Dimension songs. He was quite a talented human being. But that's how that came about. That inspired Harry and the Hendersons.
And God, it's a hard song to sing. A lot of words in that one, Rodney. If you want to sing along,
I love that song.
Yeah.
Now,
but they're all real people.
The cornerstone of the album to me is your version of Reason to Believe. And it was after Tim Hardin did it, but before Rod Stewart did it. And I think you landed it right in the pocket. I think it should have been a top 40 hit. It listens so nice. And your voice is so good on that. Did you find it from Tim Hardin, or how did that song?
I knew Tim Hardin. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And he wrote If I Were a Carpenter, and he was a tremendous writer. He really was. Tragic end, but a tremendous writer.
Yeah. Also, we'd mentioned the Beatles earlier. This features. I knew your version of I've Just Seen a Face before I knew the Beatles version of I Just Seen a Face. And I think that you sort of took the arrangement from the Beatles, but made it better because they're not bluegrass musicians, but they did a fine job. I'm curious, did any of the Beatles ever reach out to you when you recorded that song? Nothing at all?
No, I know that Douglas and the drummer were Ringo, and Douglas and Harry and Ringo hang out together a lot.
And John.
And well, I guess Douglas and Harry and John got kicked out of the Troubadour one night.
Ah, okay. I think that happened to John Lennon a lot.
He got kicked out of there that night with my brother.
That's pretty cool. That is, no, I'll take it back. That's very cool. And I'll tell you that 2 tours ago, I think maybe 10 years ago, Paul, when he toured, his opening act wasn't an opening act. Paul McCartney just had a 2-hour presentation of Beatles covers that he would pipe throughout the stadium. And I got to hear your version of I've Just Seen a Face. And I thought that was awesome. Yeah. It was all obscure stuff. It was like a long mixtape of all Beatles
We didn't
covers.
know that.
Yeah, you were in there. I heard you. So I've seen you alongside Paul McCartney, sort of.
I just made the darling face.
I want to ask you about She Sang Hymns Out of Tune. The little sort of audio pastiche before it sort of brings the album full circle because it has bits of I'll Fly Away in it, and then it goes into the actual song. Were you inspired by Sgt. Pepper's? Because that's sort of the same construction of opening an album, going through, and then closing the album with how it began.
No, I don't think consciously I wasn't. I got that She Sang Hymns off a Harry Nilsson album, Nilsson's Nilsson.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I got it.
Worn out a copy of that. You're right.
And that's where Don Henley got his version off of us.
Wow. Well,
yeah, because he told me that when he recorded with me a few years ago.
I just got to tell you that this has been so important to me through my whole life. So thank you for making that album in particular. But no shade on Copperfields, which is another great record. In Our Time should have been a #1 record. It is so perfect.
In the ashes of dying love, a new one has to grow.
What are your thoughts when you think of the Copperfield sessions? Because you were probably on sort of a high note coming off of Wheat Straw Suite, so you had to at least equal it, right?
Yeah, it wasn't much equal as what am I going to do next that I would like to do, and so Mitch and I started sitting down and figuring out what we songs, just songs. You just think about songs expressing yourself. It's like, well, it's poetry or anything else an artist does. Right. You'd write a song, if it hits, if somebody likes it, great. It's like a painting. If they like it, great. It's all in the perception, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Also, you revisit Old Man at the Mill at a slower tempo, so we can dance a little easier. I think that's nice. The harmonies,
well, I liked it because I had a drummer on that. They've been with me for 13 years, so I really liked it. You take that backbeat feel of the mountain thing, "Aim, old man," and you slow it down, and you go, "Same old man." Then you go, "Doom, doom, doom," almost halftime cha-cha, and it gives it a whole different thing. And you add the twin fiddles with Byron Burnline on top of it, and it brings around. It just melds together. I hope.
Yeah, oh, it does. And I mean, this is a weird word that I will sometimes use. Is that song has an amazing texture, if that makes any sense. It
does to me.
Good, because it's amazing to me just the way it all comes together. The banjo seems to work almost as percussion as well, and it's just a magical meld of everything. So good job on that one. Wow.
Thank you. I've got to ask you a question.
Shoot.
And I'm not blowing smoke. I really want to know the way you perceive things. How did you get where you are with what you know about the depth of music and what it takes to make it?
I've always had music in my home from when I was a baby. My mom would play records all the time, always music in the house. And I ask questions, and I'm a DJ, so I listen to the radio a lot, and you pick stuff up. But I adore music. I love all kinds of music. And that's one of the reasons that it's borderline amazing that as many times as I've listened to these songs, they still come to me. They capture me somehow. And I'll listen to, modern stuff, really, really old stuff. But this is just a comfort zone and a happy sort of region of music for me. And I like reading it. I like researching this interview. And I like offering opinions. And again, I hope I'm not asking questions you've heard a million times before.
No,
these
you're
are
not.
The things I've worried about. These are things I've thought about for a long time.
Well, don't let that. You have this eclectic approach to who you are. It's strange. I may say that.
No, please. I've been called worse. I have. But you're very kind to say so. I need to just tell you again, as we just steamrolled past the time we were supposed to end. I'm so thrilled to talk to you. The harmonies on Yesterday, another Beatles nod here, and the Beatles could have very well still been together when you recorded it because it was 1970. Obviously, that song was a standard almost when it was released. But again, is that stacked harmony on Yesterday?
It is, and I'll tell you how that happened. We were waiting for John Boylan produced that record. He did a lot of people hits, and we were just sitting there, standing around the microphone, and we just started singing. That wasn't planned.
Wow!
And we did it in one take.
No,
we were just goofing on. We were having fun. It was fun in the studio.
Wow.
You don't tense up at the red light if you make a good recording.
That is so cool. Close the Door Lightly is as lovely of a song as I've ever heard in my life. And it's the kind of song that if I said to my mom, by the way, her name is Sharon, she's as excited that I'm talking to you as I am to talk to you. I said, what about Close the Door Lightly? And she just went, "Aw." It's just such a sweet song.
I love that song.
Oh, Sharon.
It's so pretty.
Sharon,
yeah.
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate that. Good. And you have incredible taste.
Yes, she does. And also on Copperfields, you finally put Ebo Walker on vinyl, which is great. But I have to ask, and this is something that occurred to me. When you're going to sleep and the weird thoughts go through your mind just at the last second?
Oh, yeah.
I just have to ask you, in a fight, who would win, Dooley or Ebo Walker?
Well, Dooley made it. Ebo Walker drank it. So you would have to come to...
Yeah, probably Dooley. Ebo would be down.
Yeah.
And that really is the whole reason we're doing the interview.
Now, here's a related thing, which you may, I just thought about it, that when we did when John McEwen produced the Night in the Ozarks video on us.
Yeah. I have it naturally.
He interviewed a man who was talking about, you go out there to a stove, and, the guy who was talking like as an avatar to the guy who made it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That was Dooley.
No. That's
Don't tell
crazy.
I'm telling you things I probably shouldn't
say. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Now let's jump forward to 1970. You've been so generous with your time. 1972, and we have Roots and Branches, which is not only a great album, but a beautifully packaged album. I love the texture on the cover, and it's got a beautiful gatefold sleeve. It's a we've talked dogs already, but one of your dog songs on here is a Redbone Hound, which is marvelous. But even though it feels like a little bit of a throwback to some of your earlier stuff, we're hearing some distortion on the stringed instruments. Why? And earlier it was all about no distortion. What moved you to go in that direction? Even just a touch. It's just a toe in the water of distortion, but it's there.
Well, I'm going to give you a real intellectual explanation if you got time.
Oh, great. I do.
It happened because it was fun.
I'll take it. It sounds awesome. It absolutely does. And when I listened to this album this very morning, and Get Out on the Road is great. Billy Jack is great. You feel in this album, I think more than any other, like a cohesive unit playing, but less like a bluegrass band and more almost like a rock band. And you're tight. You sound so good. And you had, I guess, a 5-man roster at that time. When you think about the recording of Roots and Branches, what sticks out in your mind? Because it was definitely a little bit different than what we've heard already.
I thought about it like all the other albums I've done. I think about the next album, and I thought about that one. Wouldn't it be fun to do this? And then I was looking for other songs besides the ones we wrote to give us maybe, if you do everything, I don't want to become, what's the word, incestual with the lyrics, and I wanted to do other people's lyrics to see if I could sing and bring out the truth in what they were writing in my own vocals. And so then I had the opportunity to record other people's songs that I thought that I could deliver without sounding like Jack Jones or something.
Thank goodness you don't. Yeah, please no Jack Jones, just for that. And also people that have enjoyed the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, go back and hear a really good version of Man of Constant Sorrow, which is on Roots and Branches.
That was impromptu.
Was it? I mean, that's like a standard,
I was waiting for Richie Dials using the echo chamber that was a meat locker for the restaurant that studio was.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just in there, they were working on something. He had the reverb in my head. I never sing with verb in my headphones, but he had it on this one because for some reason we were doing something else and I just started singing it. And he said, okay. I said, what do you mean? Okay. So that's it.
It's a masterful, it's such a great capture. It's so strong. And I could go on, and I know we're really short on time. I have to credit you with one of the greatest album titles of all time, Tribute to the American Duck. That is a great album title. Also, the Dillards versus the LA Time Machine comes with a board game in the sleeve. So if you want to play a board game while you listen to the Dillards, that's the one to do too. But the last record I want to talk to you about is a little bit of a curveball. And it's also from 1977. It's Dillard, Hartford Dillard. And it is so fun to listen to this. It almost leans a little classic country at times. You revisit The Biggest Whatever with a rock and roll touch, which I love. But even though, again, this is just songs and it's you and your brother back together after he left the band along with John Hartford, there's a definite lightness and sense of humor in the album. It says to me this was a blast to record.
It was. You got to realize that you've got 3 distinct personalities there, all of a different paradigm. And to have John and Doug and me do something together, because we were kids, we played a lot together.
Sure.
In the old days, we grew up. I didn't grow up. We were already grown, but we were young adults.
Sure.
And we did a lot of stuff together. And to do that album was it was fun. It was
had to be.
Yeah,
at that point, I'm sorry to interrupt. At that point, did you miss playing with your brother? Was it fun to get back in the studio with him?
Well, you realize, maybe you don't, but I produced 2 or 3 of my brother's albums on major labels.
I had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah.
So they were together, but not together.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. That is so.
Well, see,
awesome.
When I did Wheat Straw Sweet, he wanted to stay with bluegrass, and I wasn't headed in that direction. So it was amicably, okay, Doug, that's what I want to do. And I got the record deal. I'm just going to play. So what did he do? He and Gene Clark of the Byrds did one of the most iconic 2 albums on A&M that ever were.
And so he did okay. And you did okay too. I think that's nice. Did Mom have a
favorite?
All
worked out for the good.
Did Mom have a favorite?
I mean, the boys?
Yeah, of you and
Earl.
Doug.
Yeah, Earl, the oldest one. He was the one.
Okay, you're the one that stayed
He
out of show
graduated
business.
from college and became holds patents with McDonnell Douglas and created the simulator that trained the first Gemini astronauts.
Yep.
That's all well and good, but he didn't sing. He didn't sing the songs on Wheat Straw.
No,
Sweet.
he played
So I don't
accordion.
care.
Oh, he was the world's worst accordion. He was so square. He'd get together, Doug and I'd be doing all our stuff, and he would go, roll out the barrel.
I'm surprised they didn't run him out of Missouri. I didn't know that accordions were legal in Missouri. That's fantastic.
They're
Again,
only illegal if you use them as boat anchors.
so, folks, again, we're talking to Rodney Dillard and his wife, Beverly, and the new project is called The Songs That Made Charlene Cry. They're all entertaining titles, but it's also all beautiful music. One last question. You've had an amazing career. Going back to the first albums and literally being on TV every day for the last 60 some years. That's amazing. What are you proudest of when you look back on it? And I know I'm not shutting the door on you. I know you're still touring and doing all this stuff, but up to this point, what are you proud of?
Okay, I'll tell you. I'm proud of the fact that being in this business and making your living on playing music that you beat on this thing made of wood put together, and you put wire across it and you beat on it and yell, expect people to like it. Mm-hmm. That was amazing that I had that opportunity. But the most amazing thing to me is my life. As I look back on it, I have 2 beautiful children, 2 beautiful grandchildren who are very successful, and my beautiful wife, who's so much more smarter than me. And the only reason we've been together for 43 years, like I said, she was a child shrink.
Well,
so,
yes. By the way, good luck with that, Beverly. I know he's making
it works
great
great
progress
with the bluegrass band.
You can check out. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I tell you what. Now this is going to sound like smoky hokey, but having this interview with you has meant more.
Oh, Paul, you're going to make me cry.
Yeah.
Having this interview with you has meant more to me as of all the things I've done, the way you approach it, what you said, and a lot of interview people, a lot of disc jockeys throw their own ego into something that makes it all about them. And you do totally the opposite. You draw the humanity. Well, you did out of me. And wow. I bet you on the next, all the interviews you do, that's why you've been doing it for 33. You've really affected me today.
I thought about, we booked this weeks ago, and I've been thinking about it leading up to it. And I just didn't want to blow it because I'm a really big fan. So now we can cry together. What's the matter with us?
Now you said that you used a Dillard song on your wedding. Now, if you have an anniversary party from the new CD, you should definitely play "Will You Love Me When I'm Old and Ugly."
Well,
it made Charlene cry.
So it does make Charlene cry. You have said the nicest words that you possibly could, Rodney. Thank you so much. What can I say to a guy that is such an integral part of my musical upbringing, who changed the way music was and showed up on arguably the best TV show of all time and has brought joy to me literally my whole life. It seems inadequate, but thank you. That's all. Folks,
well, thank you. Just remember, God is watching us.
Okay. Did he enjoy the interview? I hope he did.
I think so.
I think he, I don't speak for him ever because, to try to understand him would be like scratching a diamond with a feather.
I understand. You can get all of the merch at rodneydillard.tv. And I checked. Wheat Straw Sweet and Copperfields are still on Amazon. Buy them. If you can, buy them on vinyl. It sounds so good. Folks, listen to the sound. The music is awesome. Treat yourself. Thank you, Rodney. Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless you.
And bless you too.